There is one simple question most men never think to ask a woman, yet the men who ask it become unforgettable in her mind. She remembers them. She talks about them to her friends. She replays their conversations later when she is alone. This single question creates emotional impact. Today you will learn what this question is, why it works deeply, and how you can use it naturally. But before we reveal it, you need to understand something important first. Many men still ask boring surface-level questions. They ask things like, "How was your day?" They ask safe questions. These questions create no emotional connection. She stays closed. She stays distant. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever had a conversation with a woman where you felt like nothing was really happening? You were talking, she was answering, but there was no spark, no emotional pull, no moment where the energy in the room suddenly changed. If you've experienced that before, you're not alone. In fact, most men have. And I want you to do something right now that helps this conversation become real between us. If you've ever felt that situation before, leave a comment below and simply write, "I've been there." I read those comments and it helps this community grow stronger because so many men are quietly going through the exact same experience. Starting today, right now, I'm going to explain the psychology behind female attraction in a simple and clear way. You will learn powerful psychological triggers most men never understand. These triggers create emotional interest naturally. They do not require tricks. They require awareness. By the end of this, you will understand why curiosity creates stronger attraction than trying to impress her ever could. Hi, I'm Emily Carter, and welcome to the Female Game. If you're new here, this channel is about understanding the emotional and psychological dynamics that shape attraction, connection, and relationships between men and women. And today we're going to explore something most people overlook completely: the hidden power of emotional curiosity. Because here's the truth that surprises many men the first time they hear it. Curiosity creates emotional energy. Emotional energy creates attraction. Most men believe attraction comes from impressing her constantly. They talk about their job. They talk about their achievements. They talk about their future plans, their ambitions, their success. And listen, there is nothing wrong with being proud of who you are. Confidence is attractive. Ambition is attractive. But something subtle happens inside her mind when the conversation becomes centered only around you. She slowly disconnects emotionally, not because she dislikes you, but because attraction does not grow from hearing about you. Attraction grows from how she feels about herself when she is around you. This is a psychological principle that researchers in interpersonal communication have studied for decades. People feel closer to those who create emotional space for them to express themselves. In psychology, this is sometimes referred to as the self-disclosure effect. When someone talks about their own thoughts, dreams, and experiences, their brain releases small amounts of dopamine, the same chemical associated with pleasure and reward. In simple terms, when she talks about things that matter to her, she feels good. And if she feels good during that conversation, her brain begins to associate that good feeling with you. Now imagine two different conversations. In the first conversation, the man spends most of the time talking about himself, his work, his achievements, his stories. She listens politely, maybe smiles, maybe nods, but emotionally she remains neutral. In the second conversation, the man asks questions that allow her to explore parts of herself she doesn't usually talk about. Suddenly, the dynamic changes. She begins to feel alive in the conversation. She begins to feel seen. And that feeling being seen is incredibly powerful. I once spoke to a woman who described a date she had years earlier. She said she barely remembered what the man looked like. She didn't remember his job. She didn't remember the restaurant they went to, but she remembered exactly how the conversation made her feel. She said, "He asked me questions no one had asked me before. I felt like he was actually curious about who I was." Think about that for a moment. She didn't remember the facts about him. She remembered the feeling of being understood. That's the difference between surface conversation and emotional connection. Most men ask logical and predictable questions. They ask about her job. They ask about her school. They ask where she grew up. And again, those questions are fine at the beginning. They help establish basic familiarity. But if the conversation stays there, everything remains flat. There is no emotional movement, no spark, no depth. But when you shift the conversation toward what excites her, something powerful happens. Imagine asking a woman, "What's something you could talk about for hours without getting bored?" Or asking, "What's something you've always wanted to try but haven't yet?" Suddenly, the conversation becomes personal. Now, she's not just giving information, she's revealing pieces of her identity. She might start talking about a passion she hasn't shared with many people. Maybe it's painting, maybe it's traveling alone, maybe it's starting a business someday. When that happens, something inside her relaxes because she feels like she's not being evaluated. She's being understood, and understanding creates emotional closeness. Emotional closeness creates attraction. This process happens quietly. No dramatic moment announces it. But inside her emotional memory, something important begins forming. She begins associating you with comfort, with curiosity, with emotional safety. And emotional safety is one of the most powerful triggers of attraction. Many men fear asking deeper questions because they worry it might seem too serious or too emotional. But emotional depth does not signal weakness, it signals confidence. Think about it this way. Anyone can talk about surface topics, weather, work, weekend plans, but asking meaningful questions requires emotional intelligence. It shows that you are comfortable engaging with someone beyond the surface, and that kind of presence stands out immediately. Let me give you a real-life example. A man once shared a story with me about a conversation he had at a small gathering. There was a woman he had just met, and the conversation started exactly the way most conversations do. They talked about work. They talked about where they grew up. But then he asked her a slightly different question. He asked, "What's something that made you really excited recently?" She paused for a second. Then she smiled, and suddenly she started talking about a photography project she had been working on. Her energy completely changed. Her voice became more animated. Her posture shifted. Why? Because she was no longer answering routine questions. She was sharing something that mattered to her. And the interesting thing is that she later told him, "You were one of the few people that night who asked me something real." That moment stayed with her, not because he impressed her, but because he gave her space to express herself. Now, there's another psychological principle that plays a role here, and it's something very few people talk about. Emotional safety creates emotional openness. Emotional safety does not mean agreeing with everything she says. It does not mean pretending to like everything she likes. It simply means allowing her to express herself without feeling judged. When someone feels judged, their brain activates defensive responses. They become cautious. They filter their words. They protect themselves emotionally. But when someone feels accepted, their mind relaxes. Their body relaxes. They stop protecting themselves, and that's when real connection begins. You can create that safety through something very simple. Listening, but not just waiting for your turn to speak. Listening with genuine curiosity. Let her finish her thoughts. Don't interrupt. Ask follow-up questions. Even simple phrases like, "Tell me more about that," can create powerful emotional trust because those words communicate something important. They say, "Your thoughts matter." And when a woman feels that her thoughts matter, she begins to open emotionally. This emotional opening is where attraction begins growing naturally, not forced, not manipulated, but built through genuine presence. Now, here's where things become even more interesting, because there is another psychological truth you must understand. And once you understand this, it will change how you approach conversations forever. There is a difference between needing approval and having presence. Neediness pushes people away. Presence pulls people closer. Many men unintentionally seek approval during conversations. They try to say the perfect thing. They try to appear impressive. They hope she will validate them. But when someone is constantly seeking approval, it creates subtle pressure, and pressure creates distance. Presence, on the other hand, feels calm, grounded, stable. Presence means you are comfortable being exactly who you are in the moment. You are not performing. You are not trying to control the outcome of the interaction. You're simply there, simply fully engaged, fully listening, fully aware. And when a woman feels that kind of presence from a man, something shifts in her perception of him, because calm presence signals emotional strength, and emotional strength is deeply attractive. Now, here's something fascinating that happens when you stop chasing approval. She begins seeking yours, and that shift changes everything. But there's still one powerful element we haven't talked about yet, the question that creates unforgettable emotional impact. And when you understand why that question works, you'll start noticing conversations changing in ways you never expected. But before we reveal it, there's one more psychological layer you need to understand first. And this is where curiosity becomes one of the most powerful emotional triggers in attraction. Curiosity is one of the strongest emotional triggers in human connection. When someone feels that another person is genuinely curious about them, something inside their mind begins to open. Curiosity signals attention, attention signals value, and value creates emotional connection. Think about the last time someone asked you a question that made you pause and really think. Not a routine question, but something that made you reflect about yourself. Chances are you didn't forget that conversation quickly. It stayed with you. That's the power of curiosity. Women experience this the same way when a man asks thoughtful questions. She feels important. She feels interesting. She feels like her inner world matters. That feeling is rare in everyday conversation because most people are too busy talking about themselves. So when a man shows genuine curiosity, he immediately becomes different from the crowd. Now let's return to the question we mentioned at the beginning, the question that creates emotional impact. The question is simple but powerful. What's something about you that most people don't notice right away? Pause for a moment and think about what happens in her mind when she hears that. First, she realizes the conversation just moved beyond surface level. Second, she begins reflecting on something personal. Third, she senses that you are interested in understanding her beyond the obvious. That combination creates emotional intrigue. She may answer by sharing a hidden passion, a personality trait, or even a personal experience that shaped her life. Whatever she chooses to share, the conversation suddenly becomes meaningful, and meaningful conversations create emotional memory. But here's something important to remember. The question alone is not magic. What matters even more is how you respond after she answers. If she shares something personal, don't rush to talk about yourself. Instead, stay curious. Ask follow-up questions. What got you interested in that? How did that experience change you? What do you enjoy most about it? These questions invite her to keep exploring her thoughts. The deeper she goes, the stronger the emotional connection becomes. Now, let me give you a practical exercise you can start using immediately. The next time you have a conversation with a woman, challenge yourself to follow a simple rule. Listen twice as much as you speak. Notice the small details in what she says. If she mentions something she enjoys, explore it. If she shares a memory, ask about the feeling behind it. For example, if she says she loves traveling, instead of asking, "Where have you been?" ask, "What place changed your perspective the most?" That small shift transforms the conversation. Now, she's not just listing destinations, she's sharing experiences and emotions are where attraction lives. Another powerful technique is what psychologists call reflective listening. This means briefly reflecting back what you heard. For example, if she says she started learning photography because it helps her slow down and notice small details, you could say, "So, photography helps you see the world differently." That simple reflection shows that you're truly paying attention. And when someone feels deeply heard, they feel emotionally safe. Remember earlier we talked about presence. Presence becomes powerful when it combines with curiosity and listening. Together, they create a conversational environment where emotional connection grows naturally. Now, here's a question for you. Think back to your past conversations with women. Were you focused more on what you were going to say next, or were you focused on truly understanding what she was sharing? Be honest with yourself, because this small shift from performing to understanding changes everything. When you stop trying to impress and start trying to understand, women feel the difference immediately. Your energy becomes calmer, your words become more thoughtful, your presence becomes stronger, and something very interesting begins happening inside her emotional world. She starts looking forward to talking to you again. Not because you dazzled her with stories or achievements, but because talking to you feels good. She feels relaxed. She feels valued. She feels seen. and those feelings are incredibly powerful. Over time, these emotional experiences accumulate in her memory. She begins associating you with comfort, curiosity, and emotional stability. That combination is rare, and rare experiences are unforgettable. But there is one final truth I want you to remember. Attraction is not about perfection. It's not about saying the perfect line or following a script. It's about emotional awareness. It's about curiosity. It's about presence. When you create emotional safety, attraction follows naturally. When you show emotional strength, attraction grows naturally. Emotional connection always comes before emotional desire. The man who understands emotional connection becomes unforgettable. He does not chase emotional approval. He creates emotional space. She enters that space willingly. She opens emotionally and naturally. She feels safe expressing herself. And that emotional safety becomes the foundation of lasting attraction. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation, remember this. Ask better questions. Listen more deeply. Create emotional safety because emotional curiosity, emotional presence, and emotional strength will always create deeper connection than trying to impress someone ever could. Now, I want to bring everything together in a way that you can actually apply in real life starting today. Because knowledge without application changes nothing, and attraction is not built in one dramatic moment. It is built in small, consistent interactions where emotional awareness replaces ego, curiosity replaces performance, and presence replaces pressure. Let's go back to the core idea. The most unforgettable men are not the loudest in the room. They are not the ones who dominate conversations. They are not the ones constantly trying to prove their value. They are the ones who make others feel valuable. When a woman feels emotionally understood, something powerful happens in her mind. She associates you with emotional comfort, and the human brain naturally moves toward what feels safe and rewarding. This is not manipulation. This is psychology. When she feels heard, her nervous system relaxes. When her nervous system relaxes, she feels more open. When she feels open, she feels closer. And closeness is the foundation of attraction. So, what should you practice? First, practice emotional patience. The next time she speaks, resist the urge to interrupt. Even if you think you know what she is going to say, let her finish completely. That small act alone separates you from most people in her life. Second, practice depth over speed. Do not rush conversations. Let them breathe. Silence is not awkward when you are comfortable with yourself. In fact, silence can create tension in a healthy way. It allows emotions to settle and thoughts to deepen. Confidence is not filling every gap with words. Confidence is being calm in the gaps. Third, practice curiosity without agenda. When you ask a question, do not ask it to impress her. Ask it because you genuinely want to understand her perspective. She will feel the difference. For example, instead of asking questions to gather information, ask questions to explore meaning. Instead of asking, "What do you do for work?" try, "What part of your work feels most meaningful to you?" That shift changes the entire emotional direction of the conversation. Now, let's talk about something very important. Many men think attraction is created by intensity. They believe if they show strong interest immediately, it will increase connection. But emotional intensity without emotional stability can feel overwhelming. Stability is attractive when you are calm, grounded, and emotionally steady. She feels secure around you. And security builds trust. Trust builds comfort. Comfort builds connection. Connection builds attraction. This is a natural progression. You do not need to rush it. In fact, when you try to rush emotional connection, it often weakens it. Real connection grows through consistency, through listening, through presence, through genuine curiosity. Let me give you a real scenario. Imagine you meet a woman at an event. Instead of trying to impress her with stories, you ask her what she enjoys most about her weekends. She starts describing how she loves quiet mornings, coffee, and journaling. You respond by asking what she writes about. She explains that journaling helps her process emotions. Now the conversation is no longer superficial. It has entered her inner world. She feels comfortable sharing something personal, and that memory stays with her. Later, when she thinks about that interaction, she will not remember clever lines. She will remember how she felt. This is the key. People remember feelings far longer than facts. So, if you want to be unforgettable, focus on how she feels in your presence. Does she feel relaxed? Does she feel heard? Does she feel respected? Does she feel emotionally safe? If the answer is yes, attraction grows naturally. Now, I want you to do a small self-reflection exercise. Think about your recent conversations. Ask yourself honestly, did I spend more time talking or listening? Did I try to impress or did I try to understand? Did I ask questions that opened her up or did I keep things surface level? This reflection is not about judgment. It is about awareness. Awareness creates improvement. Improvement creates confidence, and confidence strengthens presence. When you develop emotional awareness, something interesting happens. You stop chasing conversations, and conversations begin flowing naturally around you. You become calmer, you become more intentional, you become more emotionally grounded. And grounded energy is powerful because when a woman senses that you are not desperate for validation, she feels the difference immediately. Desperation creates tension. Presence creates attraction. Approval seeking creates pressure. Emotional stability creates respect. Respect often evolves into deeper emotional interest. This is why the most emotionally intelligent men often stand out without trying too hard. They are not louder. They are not flashier. They are simply more aware. Now let's return one last time to the core principle. The unforgettable question works because it shifts the focus from surface interaction to identity exploration. When you ask meaningful questions, you invite her to reveal who she is beneath everyday conversation. And when someone feels safe revealing their authentic self, they bond more deeply with the person who created that space. That bond is not built through persuasion. It is built through emotional intelligence. So here's your action step moving forward. In your next conversation, commit to 3 things. Listen more than you speak. Ask one deeper question instead of only surface questions. Respond with curiosity instead of evaluation. That is it. You do not need complicated strategies. You need awareness and consistency. If you found this perspective helpful, make sure you like this video so more people can learn this message. Share it with someone who needs to understand emotional connection better. And if you are serious about improving your understanding of attraction psychology, subscribe to The Female Game and stay with us for future conversations like this. I am Emily Carter, and here on The Female Game, we focus on emotional intelligence, psychological insight, and real understanding between men and women. Remember this, attraction is not created by trying harder. It is created by connecting deeper. When you create emotional safety, she opens naturally. When you practice curiosity, she feels valued. When you stay present, you become memorable. And when you combine emotional strength with genuine interest, you become unforgettable. That is the real psychology of attraction.